Welcome to Communicology. I'm Richard Talbert. I'm an associate professor of communication and media, and I love studying human communication and how communication and culture intersect. Today I want to cover something kind of fun. I was looking in X the other day and I came across the term Presentism, and I was kind of curious about that term and didn't quite know what it meant, so I dug around a little bit, and that's when I came across this book from Douglas Rushkoff. It's called Present Shock, When Everything Happens Now. And I was kind of curious what this had to do with communication and media and culture, so I started looking a little bit further into it. And of course, it's hard to wade into communication and culture without digging into this classic work, Technopoly by Neil Postman. And this is the surrender of culture to technology. That's what his book works on. And in this term, he had a key term, in his work, he had a key term called information glut. And again, he's writing in the early 90s with this book. And the idea of information glut is quite simple. Think of drinking out of a garden hose. No big deal. Now imagine drinking out of the big release that they have on hydroelectric dams whenever they open those up and you have thousands upon thousands of gallons of water coming out. That's basically what has happened with information. I mean, in my lifetime, we've gone from these things, these books, go to a library and it's full of books and you just wade through all the possible books. And I was blessed to happen to grow up basically on a campus that had a really big and useful library. Go to that library now, a lot of the books are gone. In fact, the whole first floor has been eliminated. They've eliminated all their books and replaced them all with computer kiosks because everything you want is online. And it's not just a few books or thousands of books. It's millions upon millions of books and journals and newspapers and magazines, and everything has been moved online. When Google came into being, one of their stated missions was to digitize everything. So they've been diligent at that, and other people followed suit. So the idea of information glut is we went from having a world of this is what you get. So that's more than a lot of people read in a lifetime. And if you're a prolific reader, then maybe that's a typical year for you. I don't know. But either way, that's a typical thing that these are my books. These are all I have to go with. If I want more, I'd have to track down maybe another book, but I can only go so far or order so many books or whatever. But now, so much of it is available to us at computers, even in our phone, which really a phone nowadays is hardly ever even a phone. It's more of a microcomputer through which we funnel the entire internet through it. So we have this huge deluge of material coming our way, and so we have this information glut. And we're trying to figure out, well, how do we navigate that? Rushkoff, though, when he was looking at this idea, he was thinking of the idea that, instead of looking at what was to come, again, this is early 90s, which is the dawn of the internet, at least the internet as we know it. Rushkoff was looking at the results of basically a mediated tsunami of information crashing on society. And he was also writing in, the work Alvin Toffler before Rushkoff wrote about the idea of future shock, where we would be shocked of what's to come. And he's talking more about the now, the ever-present now, and how to handle that. And it's kind of an interesting thing because we hear the word, narcissism a lot, but this almost takes it to the furthest end of that, and that's nihilism. So the interesting thing about this is, well, how can we handle what we're talking about with this? So again, when we're looking at his work, we also, wade into other work. A scholar by the name of David Wills, came up with the thought that perhaps the greatest danger is found in Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, which is also hiding up here on the bookcase, where people basically choose ignorance as they come to reject the complexity and uncertainty provided by literature. Instead, they tend to proliferate with more exciting short form sources of media, and books have gradually lost their appeal. To the point now, as someone who's in the classroom every day, it is next to impossible to get a student to read a book. And even if they do want to read a book, several of them have a hard time actually reading a book because they've been so conditioned to work with screens and use screens. And their mind, the way the mind processes a screen is different than how you process a printed page. And that comes from Nicholas Carr, who's up here on the shelf as well. He studied that how the neurological pathways work whenever you read a screen versus reading a book. So students have a hard time even sitting down and processing a book, let alone having the desire to even do it. It's not entertaining, it's not flashing, it's not quick and short form. And I can't just swipe away. I have to engage. I have to slow down and engage. And so that kind of exposes kind of an idea of this concept of presentism, of present shock, that when it comes down to what I'm used to seeing, what I'm used to being in the process, is that I'm not there. And I want to be, I'm so used to the frantic mania of everything now instead of potentially off in the future and things like that. So again, what Willis says is basically that the idea is the end result is a sub-educated society that lives for the now and cannot perceive the future. It is one that has no knowledge of the past and can only view historical events and narrative through the looking glass of presentism. So again, the idea of I don't understand past because I haven't engaged in any kind of media or deep thought about it. Present isn't even a thought. It's always the now. And if you think about when you scroll through your feeds of whether it's Reels, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Shorts on YouTube, it's all about like now things. Almost all of it is now things. It's people interacting now, funny things happening now, gotcha, prank videos now. It's all about the now. None of it is, let's sit and actually have some discourse about what's going on, what has happened, what could potentially be. The hopes and dreams, like the concept of having hopes and dreams is not even a thing in presentism. And, it's interesting because one of Rushkoff's interesting comments he makes very early in the book, page 4, he says, we tend to exist in a distracted present. And you just think about like the idea of, growing up watching the news on television, there might be, the chyron, the information that they put, the text on a screen, it just might say the broadcaster's name. And then eventually they put the bug, which is the little emblem down the bottom corner of whether it's NBC or CBS or ABC. And then they started putting maybe a little line of text and then another line. And then they have things down the side and down this side and a crawler across the top. There's so much stuff going on and it's so hard to keep track. It's like I want to listen and watch the newscaster, but I've got all these little elements that are going on at the same time distracting me. Well, that's a very good representation of presentism. The idea like you're just getting everything all at once. And the focus is basically on, and this is what he says, is on data, not desire, reason, or context. So, I have a colleague who says that students today, all they know is content. They view everything through the lens of content. And it's easy to understand why. Because things don't come to them presented in, this is a lovely medium, appreciate it. And this thing over here, it's a different medium. It's lovely, appreciate it. And this other thing, it's a different kind of medium. It's lovely and appreciate it. And the idea of understanding it that way is lost. It's content. This, and they just grab it all. And they just consume. So like when you go up to a smorgasbord, you're not sitting there thinking about each individual dish and how wonderful it is. You're just thinking of adding a little bit of everything to your plate, and you sit down and you just got this mountain of food. And it almost all blends together. So it's one of those things where we consume our media the same way, and it becomes a very difficult thing to wrestle with. Now, he also says that future shock is of the moment, not in the moment. So again, it's not one of those things like I'm really savoring the now. It's an overwhelming of the now and being surrounded by the now. And he also notes that, you know, we used to think of things like the home of the future, the car of the future, and humans dreamed of the future or maybe even want to have the future today. Would it be cool to have flying cars? Wouldn't it be cool to have this? Would it be cool to have that? And you know, we used to have it. You used to see it all the time on television. You'd see futuristic things, and now it's just now things. And even if they have a future thing, they put in now moments. So you watch your favorite, maybe you have a show like a Star Wars or a Star Trek or something like that, which is supposed to be something distant. Now, yes, I know Star Wars is a long time ago, but still it's this distant thing from here, but they take themes from now and they shoehorn it into something that where it doesn't belong. So for some reason you have Earth 2025 themes happening, you know, in a Star Trek universe or in a Star Wars universe or some other universe. And it's done that way in all kinds of different media. So the idea that we could like look forward to something or dream of something or pursue something or have this wonderful thoughts of the past, again, it's not even a consideration. It's not that I don't want to do it. It doesn't even enter the mind. It's all about the now. And you think about how tiring and consuming that is, but you also think about how damaging that is. Because again, like the saying, you know, those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it. You know, it's a constant repetition of dumb moves that we tend to make because we're so ignorant of past because we don't even think about it. And we're so ignorant, careless about the future. We don't even think because we're not even thinking about it. Like this dumb thing is going to affect this and this and this. It's always now. I went now. So you think of like, you know, at holidays and stuff where you're eating extra food. You're not thinking in a month from now, I'm going to be 5 pounds heavier and I'm going to wonder what happened and I'm going to regret it. You're enjoying the fact that there's a chocolate covered cherry or something like that in your hand now, you know, so imagine that though, except with media everywhere. But we've tended to get rid of our dreamers, you know, and some of our dreamers have disappeared. Like, for example, Apple has not been the same since Steve Jobs died. Steve Jobs was a visionary who came up with these amazing ideas. Ever since he died, Apple's just been like, let's just tweak the newest, latest Apple product. They haven't done like these radical new things that just shake the tech world. And sometimes we even scold them, you know, like Elon Musk talking about going to Mars and what's going to take to go to Mars. And people instead say, why are you talking about that? We have stuff to deal with right now. Focus on the now. It's like, but humans are aspirational. We tend to need a goal to shoot for because otherwise you do get mired in the now. So the collapse of narrative drives us away from the future because there's no rooting in the past. We have no story how we got here. Instead, we cancel history. So things that we don't like about history, we just cancel those things and kind of pretend they didn't happen instead of learning from them. We have no story then that would help us understand how things fit into where we are. So we just create one for the now. We have no story to guide us into the future because we're too busy focusing about the now. And any invention we come up with is just to serve the present. So there's no grand thought of moving forward and how to move things forward now. He also notes in this book the collapse of patience for how an unfolding story drives us towards the quick, painless, simplified resolution. Again, think about when we watch television, especially if it's a 30-minute TV show, take away the commercial break, and it's only about 22 minutes long. We want things to start, action to happen, and get wrapped up, and the resolution happen in 22 minutes. And we're not happy if it is. Like, oh, this movie was so slow. It's like, but they're building character development. I don't have time for that. Action, now. And that's the way we've been conditioned for decades now on how to appreciate things. So when we see about a court case taking 2 years, and we wonder, why does it take so long on TV? It takes an hour, and we don't realize that no, in real life things unfold, and we need to be patient with that unfolding. The bad guy comes in, does the bad thing. The good guy comes in, stops the bad guy. Everyone's happy, clean in one movie. Instead of saying, no, it takes time. And sometimes we need to be patient and let the things unfold. We've lost human story. And that's a sad thing to think about. So we see books going to movies, to television, to TikTok, and our patience has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And we expect things happen, when you're scrolling a TikTok or a reel, you expect things to happen like in 2 minutes, because if a video is longer than that, that's just one of those things we have a problem with. So like a video like this that goes 20 minutes long, people go, ugh, 20 minutes. I don't know that I have time. But they'll watch 20 minutes worth of 1 minute videos on TikTok. That's presentism. He also notes that media programming caters to the moment. Again, you see this kind of thing like The Simpsons have been frozen in time for 20 plus years. They have been the same thing. They've never aged. And it's a perfect thing with cartoons. They just don't age. That's one of the big problems they had when they filmed Harry Potter movies. They had to hurry up and get them done because the kids were getting older. You can't, you go to like a Stranger Things, it takes a decade, and 10 years is a long time for people. They age in 10 years. The TV show Lost had that same problem. Some people would age. So you have to hurry because, age happens in real life. So they rush that kind of thing. And that media also references other media for entertainment. He mentions that. So instead of like referencing grand themes or grand historical moments or this great conquest, it's media referencing another media event. And it's kind of like a weird meta moment. And it's one of those things that we just don't understand. And we see the difficulty with understanding presentism because it's just, we're so used to it now at this point in our history, and it's a difficult thing to move through it. So basically, when you look at presentism, a quick definition from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is that presentism is that only the present is real, only the present exists. It stands opposed to eternalism, where the past, present, and future things exist. Presentism commits us to there being a change in what exists over time, a change in what's present. So to borrow a famous example, consider a headache. If a headache exists, it hurts. It can't exist and fail to hurt. Now suppose that we endorse the existence of the past and deny presentism. Past headaches exist, but they don't hurt. If headaches from hangovers from last year hurt us, neither author would be in a position to write this, so severe it would be the pain. Since headaches must hurt if they exist, it's part of their essence to do so. Past headaches cannot exist. This goes for future headaches as well. Thus, presentism is true. So we're in a situation where the idea that we can feel the present, we can feel the now. Maybe we remember the past, maybe we can visualize the future, but the now is now, and it's real now. We can feel it now, therefore let's focus on the now. And that's one of those things that it's a, because of the way mediated communication works and because the way we've been conditioned to think so, we tend to live out that way once we get away from the media. So we're always consuming things that make us happy now. When was the last time you just sat in quiet and reflected? Even you go to a dentist office, you'll see from little kids to little old ladies sitting there scrolling on their phone, doing something to keep themselves occupied instead of just sitting there and thinking, reflecting. So as we move into a new year, we tend to think, now's our time for reflection, but how often do we? It used to be a big thing where we would reflect and we'd create New Year's resolutions. Well, now it's just another day. Let's consume more content. So that's something I want you to think about. As we look at the idea of presentism and we move into what's in the future, don't forget that the future is something to dream and head towards. Don't forget about the past and the things that we've learned from there. Don't be focused exclusively on the now. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you give me a like, a share, and a subscribe. And if you didn't like what you heard, thank you very much for hanging out this long anyway. So I hope you learned something today, and we'll catch you next time on Communicology.